Awareness is the first step to transformation. Without awareness, change is impossible because what you cannot see, you cannot change. Most people live their lives on autopilot. They are driven by habits, beliefs, and emotional patterns they never consciously chose. They think the same thoughts they thought yesterday. They feel the same emotions. They repeat the same reactions in similar situations and wonder why their lives do not change. They mistake familiarity for truth and routine for identity. But when you begin to pay attention, not to the world outside, but to the thoughts within, you begin to notice the silent forces that have been shaping your life. You begin to notice how easily the mind leans toward fear, doubt, insecurity, or judgment. And for the first time, instead of being lost in those patterns, you become the one who sees. That moment of seeing is powerful. It is the moment you stop identifying with every thought that appears in your head. It is the moment you begin to understand that you are not your thoughts, but the observer of them. This is the difference between being lost and being awake. When you are unaware, thoughts control you. They speak and you obey. They say, "You're not good enough," and you believe it. They say, "You're going to fail," and you hesitate. But when awareness grows, a space forms between the thought and your reaction to it. In that space, you have a choice. And that choice is where transformation begins. Becoming aware is not about overthinking or analyzing every thought. It is about watching with clarity, with stillness. Just as you can watch clouds move across the sky without becoming attached to them, you can watch thoughts pass through the mind without becoming trapped in them. Some will be helpful. Some will not. The key is to notice, not to judge. When you start observing your thoughts, you begin to see their nature. You begin to recognize patterns. You start to realize how often the mind repeats the same stories. Stories of lack, of fear, of comparison, of failure. And you see how easily you believe those stories. But now, with awareness, you can pause, you can breathe. You can ask, is this thought true? Is it useful? Does it serve me or sabotage me? In that pause, power returns. No longer are you pulled by every thought. No longer are you reacting from habit. You begin to respond from presence. This shift may seem small, but it is everything. It is the beginning of self-mastery. When you become aware, even your suffering becomes a teacher. You begin to see that anxiety is not random, that anger is not without cause, that sadness has a voice. And when you listen, not to indulge but to understand, you begin to take back control. You stop blaming the world and you start looking within. You begin to heal, not by force, but by seeing what was hidden. Awareness is also the end of self-deception. It brings things to light that were easier to avoid. You begin to notice how often you distract yourself, how often you seek escape, how often you choose comfort over growth. And though this can be uncomfortable at first, it is honest. And in honesty, real growth becomes possible. You cannot pretend once you are aware. You cannot return to unconsciousness once your eyes have opened. And that is a gift, not a burden. The more you train your awareness, the more stable you become. You become less reactive. You stop being thrown around by emotions. You learn to sit with discomfort without needing to fix it immediately. You realize that feelings pass. You realize that not every thought deserves your attention. You become grounded, present, clear. This clarity brings confidence, not the loud, ego-driven kind, but the quiet confidence of someone who sees clearly and acts intentionally. Awareness also reveals your values. When you are not reacting from impulse, you begin to ask deeper questions. What matters to me? What kind of person do I want to be? What do I want to give to this moment? From that clarity, you begin to align your life. You start living from the inside out, not from the outside in. Your actions begin to reflect your deepest intentions, not your unconscious programming. But awareness must be practiced. It does not come from reading or listening alone. It comes from being still, from watching the breath, from listening deeply, from asking real questions. It comes from being present in ordinary moments, while walking, eating, speaking, resting. Every moment is an opportunity to wake up, to notice, to return. The more often you return to presence, the stronger your awareness becomes. It is a muscle. It grows with use. Do not wait for perfect silence or ideal conditions. Begin where you are, in the noise, in the mess. Just pause and notice. Take one breath. Observe the mind. That is enough. One breath can begin the shift. One moment of awareness can break a lifetime of habit. Do not underestimate the power of small awakenings. They add up. They deepen. And slowly you begin to see life differently. You begin to live from your center, not from your chaos. The mind will always try to pull you into stories. But with awareness, you can smile at those stories. You can watch them come and go like waves. You are not the wave. You are the ocean beneath. Still, deep, steady. That realization changes everything. It gives you freedom. The freedom to act without fear, to feel without being controlled, to live with intention. Transformation does not come from escaping yourself. It comes from knowing yourself, and knowing begins with seeing. Awareness is not something you gain. It is something you uncover. It was always there, waiting for you to turn inward, to look beyond the surface, to remember what you are. And once you remember, you cannot forget. That is the power of awareness. And that is why it is always the first step. Detach from thoughts. Do not become them. This is one of the most important realizations a human being can come to. Every day, thousands of thoughts pass through the mind. Some are inspiring, some are neutral, and many are negative, repetitive, or disempowering. The average person lives their life by reacting to these thoughts as if they are commands, assuming that if the thought arises, it must mean something true, something urgent, something that deserves attention. But this is not the case. Thoughts are not facts. Thoughts are not you. They are just mental activity, like clouds moving through the sky or waves passing across the surface of the ocean. The true self is not the thought, but the awareness that observes the thought. When you begin to detach from your thoughts, you begin to reclaim your freedom. You begin to see the space between the thought and your reaction. Most suffering happens in that unconscious space. A thought arises, and immediately the body reacts. Fear, anger, shame, regret, jealousy. These emotional responses are born not from what is actually happening, but from what the mind is saying about what is happening. When you become entangled with your thoughts, you become trapped in the stories they tell. These stories often come from the past. Past wounds, past failures, past fears. And so your present becomes a repetition of the past, projected into the future. But once you learn to step back, to see a thought for what it is, a mental event, you are no longer its prisoner. The skill of detachment is not suppression. It is not denial. It is not pretending that thoughts don't exist. It is acknowledging their presence without giving them power. It is watching the mind like a quiet observer, knowing that every thought deserves belief or attention. This is where clarity begins to emerge. When you are able to say, "This is just a thought," you remove its control over your nervous system, your actions, and your identity. You stop identifying with the voice in your head. You begin to see that it has many voices, voices of doubt, voices of fear, voices that sound like parents, teachers, society. But none of those voices are your true self. They are just echoes, recordings, habits. They may appear loud, but their volume does not make them true. A detached mind is a clear mind. It is not that thoughts disappear. It is that you are no longer disturbed by them. They may still come, but they pass. They no longer stick. They no longer spiral you into panic or insecurity. You watch them rise and fall like waves without trying to ride each one. This is freedom. And this freedom is not cold or indifferent. It is wise. It allows you to choose your response instead of being dragged by your impulses. There is great peace in detachment. You no longer feel the need to fix every thought. You no longer feel the urgency to control everything. You begin to trust in the unfolding of life. You begin to understand that not everything needs to be figured out right now. Many thoughts are just noise, leftover static from an overactive mind. When you learn to sit with yourself in stillness, in silence, without reacting to every mental image or emotion, you begin to discover a depth within you that is untouched by thought. This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. You respond with intelligence, not compulsion. You act from clarity, not chaos. You speak when needed, not out of emotional overflow. You become centered, rooted, grounded in awareness rather than lost in identity. Identity created by thoughts is always unstable. One day the mind tells you you're strong, the next it says you're weak. One moment it says you're capable, the next it doubts you. If you follow this wave, you become unstable. But when you detach, you rest in something deeper. You rest in presence. The practice of detachment also teaches you humility. You begin to see how unreliable the mind can be, how quickly it judges, reacts, assumes, how easily it is influenced by fear, by memory, by what others say, and in that recognition, compassion grows. You no longer fight the mind. You understand it. You work with it gently, like taming a wild horse. Not with aggression, but with patience. You lead it, not the other way around. Detachment also strengthens your emotional intelligence. When you no longer fuse with every thought, you become better at recognizing emotional patterns. You notice what triggers you. You notice what calms you. You begin to see the cause and effect relationship between thoughts and emotions. And with that awareness, you gain mastery. You can interrupt patterns. You can shift energy. You can step back before you speak or act. This is the foundation of inner strength. To detach does not mean to disconnect from life. On the contrary, it means to connect more deeply, but with full presence, not with mental clutter. You listen to others without projecting your own narratives. You experience the moment without filtering it through expectation. You act from wisdom, not from worry. Detachment sharpens your perception. You begin to see things as they are, not as your thoughts want them to be. This takes practice. The mind is used to being believed. It is used to running the show, but you do not have to fight it. You only need to observe it again and again. When a thought arises, notice it. Name it. That's a judgment. That's a fear. That's an assumption. Then return to your breath. Return to the now. Return to the awareness behind the thought. Over time, this becomes natural. You begin to live more and think less. Not because thinking is bad, but because it is no longer in charge. True detachment is calm, not cold. It is clarity, not indifference. It is power, not passivity. When you are detached, you are present. You are awake. You are fully here, but not bound by the storm of thought. You have come home to yourself. Not the imagined self built from ideas and comparisons, but the real self, the still awareness beneath all noise. And from this place, life changes. Not because you forced it to change, but because you are no longer feeding what was keeping you stuck. Detach from thoughts. Watch them. Let them pass. They are visitors. You are the home. Let them knock, let them speak, let them leave. You remain. Still, clear, free. Discipline the mind, or the mind will discipline you. This truth is simple but deep. Your mind is your most powerful tool, and if it is not trained, it will become your master. It will pull you in every direction, speak in every voice, create distractions, feed fears, and trap you in endless loops of thought. Without discipline, the mind becomes chaotic. It does not know stillness. It resists focus. It avoids silence. And when left unchecked, it creates suffering, not because life is unmanageable, but because the mind makes it so. The undisciplined mind will magnify small problems, replay painful memories, invent imaginary futures, and create drama where none exists. It will keep you in a cycle of stress, confusion, and inner conflict. To live in peace, to act with clarity, to grow with intention, the mind must be trained. Discipline is not about suppressing thought or emotion. It is not harsh. It is not forceful. It is steady. It is commitment. It is the quiet strength that brings order to inner chaos. A disciplined mind does not react impulsively. It observes. It chooses. It knows when to speak and when to remain silent. It knows what to focus on and what to release. It has the power to hold attention. It can resist distraction. It stays with discomfort without being overwhelmed. And most importantly, it acts according to values, not moods. This is what creates stability within. Without discipline, the mind becomes like a wild horse, powerful, full of energy, but directionless. It may run fast, but it runs in circles. It wastes energy on things that don't matter. It resists structure. It wants what is easy, not what is right. The disciplined mind learns to direct that energy with purpose. It trains itself to be present, to be aware, to let go of unnecessary thinking. Discipline begins with the decision to no longer be a slave to every thought. It begins with saying, I will take responsibility for my focus. I will take ownership of my energy. I will stop feeding thoughts that lead me nowhere. This training happens daily. It is not one moment of control. It is 1,000 small choices. The choice to return to the breath. The choice to stay in silence for a few minutes longer. The choice to respond with calm instead of reacting with anger. The choice to let go of negative inner dialogue and speak with kindness instead. These small acts build mental muscle. They strengthen the gap between stimulus and response. They create habits of clarity. Just as the body is shaped through repetition and resistance, the mind is shaped through intention and discipline. Without that, the mind falls into laziness, into distraction, into victimhood. A disciplined mind begins the day with awareness. It does not reach for noise first. It sits in stillness. It reflects. It sets intention. It knows that how you begin the day is how your mind will respond to it. It creates structure, not to control life, but to create freedom within it. With discipline, you learn to master your mornings, your attention, your emotional reactions. You stop living on autopilot. You stop being pulled by the random waves of thought and emotion. Emotional discipline is equally important. It is the ability to feel deeply, but not drown, to observe the rise of anger, sadness, or fear without letting it dictate your actions. The disciplined mind feels everything but does not collapse. It holds space. It listens. It breathes. It waits. This creates emotional intelligence. You begin to notice the early signs of agitation. You sense when the mind is slipping into old patterns. And because you are aware, you redirect, you realign, you return to the present. When you discipline the mind, your relationship with discomfort changes. You no longer run from pain. You face it. You allow it. You understand that discomfort is a part of growth, and growth is the goal. The undisciplined mind seeks escape. Through distraction, pleasure avoidance. The disciplined mind endures, learns, adapts. It turns discomfort into fuel. It does not avoid the hard path because it knows the hard path leads to strength. It does not look for shortcuts. It looks for truth. The disciplined mind also guards its environment. It chooses carefully what it consumes. Through media, conversation, reading, and attention, it knows that what enters the mind shapes its thoughts. It creates boundaries. It protects silence. It does not overexpose itself to negativity. It chooses words wisely. It avoids gossip. It resists the urge to complain. Not because it is avoiding reality, but because it values inner peace. It understands that peace is not found, it is created. It is the result of a mind that is stable focused and clear. Meditation is one of the most effective ways to develop mental discipline. It is the practice of sitting with the mind, watching its movements, and choosing to stay, to return, to breathe. It is not about controlling every thought, but about not being controlled by them. Over time, this strengthens presence. It builds the habit of returning to now. The disciplined mind becomes sharp, aware, still. It can focus on a task for hours. It can listen deeply. It can enter silence and not feel fear. It does not need constant noise to feel alive. It is rooted in being. Discipline also means consistency, showing up even when motivation is low, choosing what is right over what is easy, continuing to walk even when the path is unclear. This builds character. It builds trust in yourself. You begin to know that you will follow through. You begin to rely on your inner strength, not on outer conditions. Discipline becomes your foundation. It becomes the structure that supports your freedom. You do not need to be perfect to have discipline. You will fall, fail, forget, but each time you return, you grow stronger. Each time you choose presence over distraction, awareness over reaction, wisdom over impulse. You build resilience. This is not a one-time effort. It is a lifelong practice, but it leads to transformation. Slowly, the mind becomes a servant, not a master. It becomes a tool for clarity, not a source of suffering. Discipline the mind, or the mind will discipline you. One path leads to power, the other to confusion. One path leads to freedom, the other to fear. Every moment offers you the choice. And that choice, made again and again, is what shapes your life. The disciplined mind does not wait for peace to come. It creates it one thought at a time, one breath at a time, one moment of awareness at a time. Feed the thoughts that build you, starve the ones that break you. Your mind is like a garden. Whatever you feed will grow. If you constantly water fear, doubt, insecurity, and anger, those seeds will take root, and over time, they will become strong vines that choke out your confidence, peace, and potential. On the other hand, if you consciously choose to feed thoughts of strength, clarity, gratitude, courage, and self-worth, these will grow stronger and take over the mental space once occupied by negativity. Every thought you allow into your mind is either building you or breaking you, lifting you or limiting you, empowering you or enslaving you. You have to choose which ones to feed. Most people are not aware that their inner dialogue creates their emotional reality. They think thoughts just happen, and they assume that because a thought appears, it must be true or important. But not all thoughts are worthy of belief. Many are old programs, echoes of past pain, inherited ideas from others. Some thoughts are protective mechanisms formed in childhood, meant to shield you from rejection or failure, but they no longer serve you in adulthood. To transform your mind, you must become selective. You must become intentional. You cannot allow every thought to take up space in your inner world. Feeding a thought means giving it attention, believing it, repeating it, and acting in alignment with it. Starving a thought means observing it without feeding it, not reacting to it, not giving it energy, and not building your identity around it. You cannot stop every negative thought from arising, but you can choose what happens next. You can choose whether to engage with or let it pass. This choice, repeated over and over, is what determines the quality of your mind and the direction of your life. You do not have to fight every negative thought. You only need to stop feeding it. When a thought arises that tells you that you're not good enough, that you will fail, that no one cares, that nothing matters, you don't need to argue with it. You simply need to recognize it as an unhelpful thought and turn your attention elsewhere. Just as a fire dies out without fuel, a negative pattern weakens when you stop giving it energy. You build a stronger inner world not by force, but by focus. Feeding positive thoughts is a conscious discipline. It requires you to speak to yourself with kindness even when you feel low. It means holding on to your values when fear tries to shake them. It means remembering your worth even when the world does not reflect it back to you. It is not fake positivity. It is not denial. It is choosing the voice of truth over the voice of fear. It is choosing growth over safety. It is choosing to become who you were meant to be, not who the world conditioned you to be. There are days when the mind will be louder with negativity. On these days, it is even more important to be aware, to not follow every thought that appears, to not fall into old stories. The mind will say things that feel real, but you must ask G, does this thought serve me? Does it help me grow? Does it reflect the truth of who I am, or just an old version of myself? When you ask these questions, you become the driver, not the passenger. You take responsibility for the energy you carry. What you feed grows. If you feed a thought of comparison, it will become jealousy. If you feed a thought of fear, it will become anxiety. If you feed a thought of failure, it will become paralysis. But if you feed a thought of effort, it becomes progress. If you feed a thought of gratitude, it becomes joy. If you feed a thought of purpose, it becomes meaning. Every time you choose which thought to nourish, you are choosing your emotional and mental direction. The mind is very much like a muscle. What you train strengthens. If you constantly engage with negative, self-defeating thoughts, your brain becomes wired for that pattern. But you can change it. Neuroplasticity shows us that with consistent mental practice, you can rewire the way your brain processes reality. This means you can literally train your mind to think in ways that support you, not sabotage you. But it takes awareness. It takes effort. It takes daily practice. Just like a bodybuilder trains the body, you must train the mind. Feeding the right thoughts also means surrounding yourself with the right environment. The thoughts you hear the most are influenced by what you consume. What you watch, read, listen to, and who you spend time with. If you're constantly surrounded by negativity, criticism, and fear, your mind will absorb those messages. But if you make an intentional effort to consume inspiration, wisdom, and knowledge, your mind will begin to reflect that. Guard your inputs because they shape your internal world. Choose what feeds your spirit not what drains it. You don't need to be perfect in your thinking. You only need to be conscious. When a negative thought appears, notice it, but do not nurture it. Do not water it with more attention than it deserves. Let it pass like a cloud in the sky. And when a thought appears that uplifts you, strengthens you, motivates you, hold on to it. Repeat it. Speak it out loud. Write it down. Align your actions with it. This is how you train your mind to serve you, not sabotage you. When you consistently feed positive, growth-oriented thoughts, they begin to form your new identity. You start seeing yourself differently. You speak differently. You walk with more confidence. You become more resilient. The old patterns lose their power, not because they vanished, but because you stopped feeding them. You stopped giving them a home. And in that space, something new begins to grow. Something stronger. Something more aligned with who you truly are. Every thought is either a step forward or a step back. Every time you engage with a thought, you are shaping your future. This is not about toxic positivity. It is about conscious creation. It is about mental responsibility. You cannot control every event in life, but you can control what you give your energy to. And that choice, repeated over time, becomes your mindset. And your mindset becomes your reality. So take ownership. Pay attention. Notice what thoughts you are feeding today. Are they lifting you or limiting you? Are they based on truth or fear? Are they helping you evolve or keeping you small? Be ruthless with the thoughts that break you. Be loyal to the ones that build you. Your life will begin to shift the moment you realize you are the gatekeeper of your mind. No one else can choose your thoughts for you. That power is yours. Use it wisely. Feed only what makes you grow. Starve the rest. Let it fade. Let it go. And step forward into the strength that has always been waiting inside you.